Following the 1917 Russian Revolution and the establishment of the Soviet Union, Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin sets up a large nationwide network of forced labor camps known as the Gulag.
The word Gulag is actually an acronym for the Chief Administration of Labor Camps. The Gulag is the Soviet penal system.
At its peak, the Gulag is comprised of nearly 500 prison districts with up to 30,000 individual prison camps. They stretch across the vast country, many of them in remote locations in harsh climates like Siberia and Central Asia. In 1960, the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev disbands them. But while the Gulag officially closes, some of its worst prisons secretly remain open, like Perm 36. Located near the Siberian border just outside of the town of Perm, is perhaps the most feared secret Gulag prison. Built in the 1940s as a typical Gulag prison under Stalin, in the 1960s, when most camps are closing, it transforms into the harshest political prisoner labor camp in the country. And one brave inmate and political dissident, Balys Gajauskas, wants the world to know it exists.
Balys Gajauskas is a Lithuanian nationalist imprisoned in Perm specifically because the KGB had come to search his apartment. And they found a copy of Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. To have a copy was very dangerous because it was banned.
The Gulag Archipelago, by renowned Soviet author Alexander Solzhenitsyn, is a historical novel which exposes the horrors of the Gulag and their enormous expansion under Stalin. Balys is sentenced to 10 years of hard labor and 5 years in exile for possessing the book. When he gets to Perm 36, he's already survived 25 years in other Soviet Gulag camps.
Because they considered him someone who had committed crimes before, they treated Balys Gajauskas incredibly harshly.
When he arrives, Gajauskas is first thrown into the Shizo.
The Shizo is a punishment cell for inmates. New inmates would be told to strip down immediately. They were put in the Shizo for a week. They would have to suffer extreme cold, very little food, and no bedding, just a plank to lie on.
Balys Gajauskas is more determined than ever to tell the world that the brutal Soviet Gulag is alive. It takes time, but he devises a plan at great risk to himself and his wife to smuggle out his story and the writings of a fellow inmate from Perm 36, the most secure prison in the Soviet Union.
When his wife would come on her yearly visit, she would bring a very thin, transparent piece of paper from the pharmacy. And with this paper, Balys Gajauskas would write in infinitesimal script.
Balys describes the work conditions in the camp and hides the paper in the walls of his cell during the day. Before his wife's next visit, he folds and rolls the paper over and over, forming a slim capsule that he passes on to her.
He smuggled out information about what had happened in the camp. And he smuggled out the writings of Vasyl Stus, one of the greatest Ukrainian poets of the 20th century.
The final manuscript that Balys Gajauskas and his wife smuggle out of Perm 36 leads to a scathing 10-page article titled On the Work Conditions of the Soviet Union, published in Switzerland in 1986. The Soviet officials suspect who wrote it, and despite his denials, officials intend to punish Balys. But the eyes of the world are on them, so they devise a scheme to silence him. They put a hardened killer in the cell with Balys, Boris Romashov.
This convicted murderer is placed in this cell in order to intimidate, beat, if not murder, this Lithuanian nationalist.
Each day, Balys worries about an attack from Romashov.
In the morning hours, they would go to the same workroom, and all of a sudden, Boris took a screwdriver and proceeded to stab Balys 12 times, narrowly missing his heart.
Incredibly, Balys Gajauskas is taken to the Gulag hospital and survives. He's transferred to other remote Soviet prisons to complete his sentence. In 1988, after serving nearly 10 years in Perm 36 and 37 total years in the Gulag, Balys is allowed to go to the United States. Eventually, he returns to his native Lithuania, and after the fall of the Soviet Union, he becomes the country's Minister of the Interior. That same year, when the Soviet Union collapses, every secret Soviet gulag finally closes.